here from Reactive Software Development Agency, and today we're going to learn how to build a sticky notes application using Bubble. In this tutorial, we are going to learn how to create all these cool features like filtering by older date or the newest date, searching by title or description, filtering by archived or active notes, from and to date, adding new sticky notes, and also changing the background color dynamically. For you to be able to take a track of the content that I'm going to present in this video, we are going to mark the important topics one by one using the Notion platform. When we start with building application in Bubble, usually we want to start with the database because the database structure is a very important part of the planning of our application. It will have important consequences later on how we will use the data when we were building our applications. We need to make a plan. What do we want to store in our database? Because we are building a sticky notes application, we know that we want to store some information about users that will use the application. Then we will need a table to store the sticky notes that our users will create. And we'll also need another table for the colors because Bubble have this interesting functionality to add colors dynamically. Here in the Data tab, we already have a user table, and this table is created from Bubble. It has these 4 built-in fields for email, modified date, created date, and Slack. But we still need to create additional tables for our application. We can create new table on new type. We will create now one for the colors. And here again we can see the built-in fields from Bubble. We also need to create another field for the colors. So on create a new field. We'll name this field color and it will be of type text. In the app data, we will create a new entry for each color that we want to use in our application. On new entry, here we will create the colors, and there is a specific way of writing the colors, so they must always start with a hashtag symbol. But if we don't write the hashtag symbol here, we can just add it later in the editor. And it really doesn't matter if the colors are written with capital letters or not. Now I will add one color with this hex code, and this is actually a yellow color. And I will also create all entries for the colors, but you can find all colors used in this video in the description below. As you can see, I have already created these 5 entries for the colors, but I will write them below in the description so you can just copy them. Another table that we want to create is notes. And here also we will create our custom fields despite the ones that are built in from Bubble. We will need a field for the title, which will be of type text, field for the description, also will be of type text, field for the date, and this will be of type date. We will need archives field to store our finished notes, and this will be of type yes or no. And we will set the default value to no because we want at first all nodes to be active. And one more field where we will store the color of the note. It will be of type text, and it will have default value, yellow color, for example, or this hex code. Now that we've created notes and colors tables, we only miss one field in our users table, and that is a field for storing the user's notes. And we will name this field notes, and it will actually be of type notes. What have we learned so far in this tutorial? We were talking about database and how to structure properly the database tables. We had seen that Bubble has a built-in table for users. We had created two tables additional for color and for notes, and we also created fields for our notes table like title, description, due date, archived, and color. When we first create a project in Bubble, we are getting this blank page. If we double click on the page, we can see the default settings, and here we can fix some of them. For example, container layout, we will set to be column. And the min height we will set to 600 pixels. Bubble recently announced their component library that we were all waiting for. So in the components, here you can find all the components that Bubble provides for us. And here there are a variety of components like header, hero, cards, footer, and so on. In our case, we want to start with a sign up and login page. So we are going to use this sign up login component, and we'll drag this into the editor. Now we are going to adjust these elements for our application. We are going to delete the logo, for example. And we're going to change this title to be Welcome to Noted. Noted will be the name of our application. And here on the rich text editor, we're going to choose some cool font for our name. Like this one, for example. And let's see how it looks like in the browser. Now we're going to create login and sign up workflows. First, we'll create sign up functionality. So double click on the sign up button. On Start Edit Workflow, this will take us directly to the Workflow tab. We'll click here to add an action. And what we want to do here is to sign the user up, so we'll choose that action. Our email will be the email input from our sign up form. Which is this one here, and also the password. Actually, I'm going to delete this re-enter password field because I won't be using it for our application, and also the password validation. Now let's go back to the workflows. So in the email, I'm going to use input sign up emails value. And for the password, input passwords value. We noticed in the form that we have another field for the name. And we also want to store the names of our users in the database. So here, change another field. If we click to add, we actually can see that we don't have this field created yet in the database. And we are going to create it directly from here because Bubble allows that as well. So create a new field. Our field will be name and it will be of type text. Now, if we go back in our database, in the users table, here is the field that we have just created. So, name will be equal to input signups names value. Now let's create our login workflow, the same way as we did with the signup. We will show our login card, which is hidden at first, and we'll hide signup for now. Double click on the login button, start edit workflow, click here to add an action, and now the action will be log the user in. And for the login user, we only need email and password. So email will be our input login emails value. And for the password, input login passwords value. And we will remember the password. Now let's go back to the browser and see if this is actually working. We will just use the same name and email as in the example. So name will be John Doe. And for email, johndoe@gmail.com. I will write simple password 1234 test and click on sign up. So on the front end side, nothing is happening at the moment because we are not hiding anything yet when the user is logged in. But here in the database, we can see that the user John Doe is now created in our users table. Because here we are building a one-page application, we won't navigate to a different page after the sign up or login. We're just going to hide the sign up login group and show our nodes group. So we will make this group to be visible on page load and collapse when hidden. And in the conditional, we will define another condition. We're going to tell this group when the current user is logged in, we want this element to not be visible. And now in the front end, if we refresh the page, the form is not visible. Now let's create the page itself. First, we'll add one group that will wrap all our elements, and we'll name this group page wrapper. We'll set the container layout to column. We'll set its width to 0 and horizontal alignment to be stretched. We'll set the min height to 600 pixels and fit height to content. Now this group won't be visible on the page load and collapse when hidden. And in the conditional, we'll add a new condition. When the current user is logged in, then this group is visible. Now let's add the header. For our header, we're going to drag a group here and we'll name this group header. We will set its layout to row and container alignment to space between. We will uncheck the fixed width, and here we won't set to fit to content because we want to be stretched to the edges of the page. And we'll set its height to 60 pixels. We will also set the padding to 24 pixels from left and right. Now here we'll just drag a text element for the logo. We'll name it Noted. In the layout, we will set its width to 0 and fit width to content and set the height to 30 pixels. In the appearance, we'll remove the default styles and set its size to 30 pixels. And now we will choose some interesting font from the list. Like this one, for example. You can find the name in the description below. Now back to the layout. We will set the vertical alignment to be centered vertically. Now we'll need another group to show the user's name and the logout button. We'll just drag a group here and we'll name this group user. We will set the container layout to row. We will remove fixed width. And set the width to fit to content. And we're actually gonna give this group width of 100 pixels and min height of 30 pixels. Now inside this group we will drag another text element. And in the layout we will set its width and height to fit to content. And also the vertical alignment to be centered. Now we will add a button element, and this will be our logout button. We will remove default styles and we will add our custom styles. For color, we will choose a black color. And for the background color, we will choose white. And we will remove this condition on hover. Now in the layout, we'll also make this button fit width to content. And we will remove the padding. We will set it to 5 pixels. Vertical alignment to be centered. And we will give left margin of 10 pixels so it has some space between the button and the text element. On this text element, we want to show the name of our user dynamically from the database. For that purpose, we need to set these groups, type of content, and data source. So first on this group header, we will set the type of content to be user. And for data source, we will choose current user. Now on this small group user, we will also set type of content to be user and data source to be current user. Then on this text element, we will set the dynamic data. So after hi, we will insert dynamic data and we will choose parents group user's name. Just a small correction of the position of this group. We will set the vertical alignment to be centered and container alignment to be right position. Let's preview this in the browser. Now here is the name of our first created user. Now we want to make this logout button functional, and it is actually a very simple workflow. So let's go back to our editor, double click on the button, start edit workflow, and as an action here we will choose log the user out. Let's see what have we learned so far from the UI. We have seen the component library from Bubble. We have used one of these components in our application. We have created sign up and login workflows, and we have learned about conditions. What we have learned so far from the creating of the header. We learned how to dynamically read data from the database and how to log out the user. Now let's create our sticky notes. I will drag a repeating group here and I will name this notes. We'll set the container layout to be row and set the container alignment to be centered. We'll make this min width to be 350 pixels and fit width to content. And we will set min height to 200 pixels and also fit height to content. Now in the appearance, we will uncheck fixed number of rows and we will set min height of the row to be 300 pixels. And we will also uncheck fixed number of columns. And we will set min width of column to be 270 pixels. Now inside this repeating group, we will drag another group and we'll name it note. In the layout, we will set the container layout to be column And we will also apply some space between the elements of, for example, 4 pixels. We will actually leave this group to be fixed width of 270 pixels and height of 270 pixels as well. We'll give this group some left and right margins of 10 pixels. And padding of 10 pixels from each side. Let's give this group some styles on the appearance. Here we will remove default styles. And we actually want these cards to look more like a sticky notes, so we will add some shadow style to be outset and set horizontal and vertical offset to 4 and also blur radius to be 4. We will choose a box shadow color to be black with 10% opacity. We should also add a background style to these sticky notes, and here later we will see how to add a dynamic color, but for now let's just choose some color from these static colors. Now here we will drag another group inside this node group, and we will name this group remove. It will be of container layout row. We will give this group min width of 100 pixels and height of 25 pixels. Next, we will drag an icon inside this group. And we'll search for close. We will set the width and height of this icon to be 25 pixels and both to be fixed. Back to remove group, we'll set the container alignment to right position. And I'm not really sure why we don't have spacing on the edges of this group. Maybe we missed something, but I will add again padding of 10 pixels from each side. Next, we will add inputs for title and description. So first input for the title, and we'll set the width to fit to content. And also the height of 30 pixels. Then we'll add multi-line input for the description. And we'll set width fit to content and min height of 150 pixels. Next, we will add another group to show the colors from the database and also for the date. We'll name it cart footer. The container layout will be row with space between alignment. We will uncheck fixed width and we'll set min width to 100 pixels, width height of 30 pixels and fit to content. Actually I wrote 20, but it should be 30 pixels. Now inside this group we will drag another repeating group for our colors and we'll name this colors. We'll set the container layout to be row. Now in the appearance, we will leave the fixed row and we'll set to have only one row and column with min height of 20 pixels. Back to layout, we will set min width to 0 and min height to 20 pixels. In the appearance, again we will remove default styles, so we can remove the separator. Now for the colors, we'll drag a group inside this repeating group and we'll name it color. We will give this group fixed width and height of 15 pixels. And in the appearance, we will remove default styles and we will set roundness to be 50 pixels so we can get full circle. Now back to our repeating group. We will change its container alignment to be centered and fit with the content. Next, we are going to add another group for the date. Which will also have container layout row, right alignment, and centered vertical alignment. We'll give min width of 100 pixels, fit width to content, and height of 20 pixels. We'll name this group date. Inside this group, we will drag an icon for the calendar. Width and height fixed of 15 pixels. And we will also drag the date picker. We'll set the width to 0. And fit to content. Height of 20 pixels. And we'll make this to be last element in the group. Now let's give these groups type of content and data source. And we'll go hierarchically here from the biggest group to the smallest. On this page wrapper group, we'll set type of content to be notes. Then on this repeating group, we'll also set type of content to be notes. And for the data source, we will do a search for notes. And we'll look for the notes whose creator is current user that is logged in. Then on this note group, we'll also set type of content to be note. And data source will be current sales notes. And we'll do the same for each of these groups inside repeating group. And here for the title, we are going to add additional property for uppercase. Now, this looks fine. Now for the colors group, it's a little bit different because we are going to take the type of content from the colors table. So here in this repeating group, type of content will be text. And for data source, we are going to do a search for color. And we'll add a constraint when color is not equal to parents group notes color. This means that the color that this card already have as a background will not be shown in this repeating group. Then on this group color, we are going to set type of content to be notes, and we won't set data source. But here we will set the background color to this group, and it will be current sales text. Now finally we can set also the background color of the sticky notes dynamically, and it will be current sales notes color. Let's now take a look at this group that I have already created. We will take a look at each of these elements later and what will be their functionality. But at the moment we are most interested in this Add New button. Here we have button and an icon, and these two are wrapped in the same group. It is very important because we are going to actually create the workflow for creating new sticky notes on the group. So on this group, start edit workflow, and we will create an action for creating new thing. The thing we want to create is notes, and this will actually create new blank note in our notes database. Now we want to know who is the user who created this note. So we will make changes to a thing, and the thing we want to change is current user. In the notes field, we are going to add the result of step 1 or the note that we created earlier. Now here we have created one empty sticky note with title and description and date, and we also want to make a workflow. When we click on each of these colors, the background color of the sticky note to be changed accordingly to that. Okay, so double click on the color group. And on Start Edit Workflow, here we'll add an action to make a change in the database. We'll search for this group's notes. So we named our sticky notes group note actually, and this is what we are going to change. Field that we're going to change is color, and as a value, we'll take current sales text. And now from here, we can manipulate the background color of the sticky notes on click of these color circles. In this tutorial section, we have learned how to work with different types of content and how to set dynamic background color. Our next step is to save these 3 inputs for the title, description, and the date in the database. As you can see here, we don't have save button or add or create button, and that means that these inputs are going to be inline inputs. And to be able to save inline inputs in our database, we need to add some privacy rules or to allow auto binding on the fields in our database that we are going to save their values immediately. Now back to the data tab. Here in privacy, we need privacy rules for our notes table, and we'll define a new rule. We'll name this rule notes values. And now here we need condition when the current user is logged in, so only then we can save these values. And we need to allow auto binding for the title and for the description. Let's go back to our workflows. And here we will create a new workflow. And with this workflow, we want to trigger the changing of the value of our inputs. You can find such a workflow in Elements when inputs value is changed. So when our title's input value is changed, we want to make some changes in the database. And the thing we want to change is group. So group notes. This is actually our sticky note. Actually, here you can go with parents group notes because earlier we specified the parent element of our input title. As a value, we're going to pass this input's value. So whatever we are going to enter in this input. We will repeat the same step for description. So when input's value is changed, our input is multi-line input description. We will make changes to a thing in the database, same parents group notes, and as a value we're going to take this multi-line inputs value. And one more workflow for the date. This is our element, datetime picker. Another thing that we want to do here is when we click on this close icon, we want to mark the sticky note as an archived sticky note. So we will create a new workflow. And this will be the same as earlier. We'll make changes to a thing in the database. And the thing we want to change is parents group notes. We will change archived field and we will set this to yes because previously we set the default to be no. Now let's change something in our sticky note. For example, we're going to write the title by groceries. And we'll write some groceries, for example, salad, oat milk, and what else? Let's say pumpkin. And we will set the date to 29th of November. Okay, now if we refresh the page, we can see that our inputs are not deleted, which means these values have already exist in our database. And if we go back to our database, in the notes table, we can see title, description, and date here. Our archived field is still with the default value because we didn't change anything there. But if I go back and click on this close icon actually, and let's go back to the database. If we refresh the data, the value has changed to yes. Okay, so let's take a look at this filters group that we mentioned earlier. Here we have a drop down for filtering by older or by newest. We have search bar, active and archived buttons. We have filter by date. And first we'll start working with custom state. Here we have these two buttons, active and archived. And we actually want to filter these sticky notes in this repeating group depending on the button that we are going to click. But to achieve that, we need to work with custom state. Custom states are very useful when we want to store some information on the page and not store them permanently in the database. Custom states preferably are created on the page itself. Now if we go in the elements on the top of the page and click on the page index, here on this information icon, this is the place where the custom states are creating, and add a new custom state. We'll name this state is active. It will be of type yes or no. And we'll set the default value to be yes. And now on click of each of these buttons, we are going to update the state. So double click on the active button, start edit workflow. When we click on active, we want to set state of an element. And the element is index page. Our state was is active. We want to update the state to be yes. And we are going to do the same about archived button. Start edit workflow. Set state of an element. Our element is index page. Custom state is active. And here we are going to do the opposite. When we click on archived, we are going to update the state to be no. And now we need to take into account these two states every time when we want to filter the repeating group. We will set the condition on this repeating group so it will know how to filter the sticky notes. On the conditional, we'll define new condition when this page or when index page is active is our state. So when the state is yes, we want to change the data source of this repeating group. Data source will be do a search for nodes, and we will take the nodes that are created by current user, of course, and we will show the nodes whose archived equals no. So this will show only active sticky nodes. And we'll define another condition about when active is no. So when index is active is no. We will also search for nodes that are created by current user and whose archived is yes. And this will show only archived nodes. Now in these brackets here, we want to show the number of active and archived sticky nodes. So we will add a dynamic data and we will search for the nodes in the database. And again, the creator will be current user. And here we want to show only active nodes, so we will search for nodes where archived equals no. And click on more. We will take the number of these sticky nodes. We will copy this expression and we will paste between the brackets in the archived button. And we will change only where archived is yes. So we will show the number of archived nodes. And here, as you can see, we have one archived node from earlier. If we add another sticky node, it is active. It is not marked as archived. We have one sticky node that is archived and one that is active. We also want this remove icon to be different icon when the state is archived. So double click in the conditional, we'll define a new condition. When indexes is active state is no, we'll search for another icon. It will be return icon. And we also want a different workflow for when the isActive state is no. So on start edit workflow, it will take us to the workflow that we created previously for this icon. And here we'll add a condition only when indexes is active state is yes. So only in this case, on click of this icon, we're going to mark this sticky notes as archived. And I'm gonna copy this workflow, and I will use the same workflow for when is active state is no. And I will just change the conditional here. So when is active state is no. In this case, we are going to mark archived as no. Now here, if I go to the archived sticky notes and if I click on this icon for return, as we can see that we have no longer archived sticky notes because we have returned this one to be active again. Let's take a look at this drop-down order by. This is just a simple drop-down element from here. It has two static choices, older first and newest first. And to be able to sort the sticky notes in the repeating group, in conditional we need to check which one of these two choices was chosen. But first we need to start with the custom state because we need to define different conditions for active and for archived sticky notes. So we'll start first with active sticky notes. So when indexes is active, is yes. And we'll define another condition on more. When the drop-down order by value is, and here we need to take the static choices from the drop-down. First we'll check if it is newest first, and this is case sensitive. We need to be careful when writing this. Okay, so in this case we want to change the data source. We'll do a search for nodes. Where creator is current user. And where archived is no. And now we'll do the sorting. On more, we'll search for sorted. We want them to be sorted by date and first by descending order. And we will do the same for when the static choice is older first And we can just copy this condition and paste it right here. We will just change the value of the drop-down element to be older first. This is fine. And in sorted, we will change descending to be no. So we can get the older sticky notes up to the top. Now we need to set two more conditions, so when the state is active is no. And we can just again copy this condition and paste it here. So we will change when is active is no. And first we will check if the drop-down value is newest first. Here we will search for archived nodes, where archived is yes. And first we will sort them by descending order. And we will copy this condition and paste it again. We will change here the value of the dropdown to be older first. And sorted by date where descending is no. All right. Now, I know that this might be a little confusing at first because there are too many conditions to be aware of, but once you understand this logic and how the filtering works, it is really simple. Now here we have input element and our search and autocorrect element. This is actually a fuzzy search plugin. You can download this plugin in the plugins tab. And later you can find it in the elements as search and autocorrect. This search and autocorrect element and our input element needs to share the same ID. So this element already have a field where we can write our ID attribute, but the input element does not have that kind of field yet. And so we can write an ID attributes to our HTML elements. We need to go to the settings, and in general, we need to check this field here to expose the option to add an ID attributes to our HTML elements. And once we check this, if we go back to the editor, we have a new field for ID attribute. And we will write some ID here, for example, search notes. And we will copy this and paste it right here. Now we need to give data type and data source to our search and autocorrect element. For data type, we're going to choose nodes, and for data source, we are going to do a search for nodes where creator is current user. And we're going to search by title and by description. And we are going to check this field here. And here again, we need to consider the isActive state on our index page. So in conditional, we'll define a new condition. When indexes is active is yes. Then the data source will be do a search for nodes where creator is current user and where archived is no, because we want to show only active sticky notes. We'll copy this condition and paste it here. We will just change the state to be no, and we'll search for sticky notes where archived is yes. And then on this repeating group, we will also define another condition. And with this condition, we want to trigger the input. So when our input's value is not empty, for data source, we will choose our search and autocorrect element. If we go to the browser and if we try to type something here, for example, buy, here is our buy grocery sticky note. If I go to archived and also try to type buy, I don't have nothing in the results because all of our sticky notes are active at the moment. If I go back to active and mark this as archived, and then again inactive sticky notes, if I search for buy groceries, I don't have it because we already marked this as archived. And the last type of filter that we are going to add in this tutorial is filtering by date range. Here we have two date time pickers. One we will use for filtering from date and another one for filtering to date. And in this repeating group, in the conditional, we will start with the custom state. So when indexes is active, is yes, and also we need to take into account this two date pickers. So when date time picker from value is not empty, which is this one, and when date time picker 2 value is not empty. In this case, the data source of this repeating group will be do a search for nodes where creator is current user, where archived is null, where date is bigger or equal from the date picker from value, and one more constraint where date is smaller or equal to the date pickers to value. We are considering both of these cases because this is how we are going to set the range to be between these two date pickers values. And now we'll copy this condition and paste it here. For when the custom state is active is null. We're going to search for the sticky notes where archived is yes. And we are going to change that. Everything else stays the same. Now on this clear dates button, we need to clear the values of these date pickers so we can get all results again in the repeating group. On Start Edit Workflow, we'll search for Receipt Relevant Inputs, and we're going to receive the inputs only when date time picker from value is not empty. If we have something chosen on this date picker, and we will copy this and we will use it for date time picker too. Now here in the browser, I'll just add few more sticky notes. Okay, here we don't see the full year, so let's just quickly fix this in the editor. We'll set the min width to this element to be 100 pixels, and that should be enough. Okay, now we'll add one more sticky note. Go to Gym. And the date. Okay, so we can mark some of these sticky notes as archived. For example, this one and this one. And if we choose the date from 29th of November, let's say, until 1st of December, and we have only one sticky notes between these two dates. If I clear the dates, I can see that their values are empty and I can get all sticky notes again in the repeating group. So far in this section, we were talking about filters. We learned how to create a custom state and how to use it. We learned how to filter a repeating group depending on the value chosen from the dropdown. We implemented search bar with using fuzzy search plugin, and we learned how to filter by date range. This is how to build a sticky notes application using Bubble. If you like this video, see you on the next one.